Welcome back to the MOOC course titled Qualitative Research Methods. My name is Aradhana Malik and I'm helping you with this course. In the previous lectures, we've discussed what qualitative research is, what qualitative research methods are, how they shape your inquiry, when you should pick these methods, what the aim of your inquiry or how you should decide to pick these methods, etc. In the very last class, we discussed qualitative research design and what it involves, and we talked about the different steps of qualitative research design. So if you can just focus on this is here. We talked about different stages, we talked about warm-up and preparation, deciding on the questions that guide the study. Then we talked about the characteristics of qualitative research design. We talked about exploration and exercises. So first you decide what you want to do, how you want to do it, why you want to do it. Then we talked about cooling down, illumination, and formulation, and we talked about the last step called narration. Now, having said all that, once the design is decided, then we need to actually start picking the tools, these strategies of inquiry. And the first strategy that we are going to discuss, there are some more concepts in research design that we'll discuss, followed by the different strategies of qualitative inquiry. So we'll start with methodolatory. Methodolatory is a combination of method and idolatory, which describes a preoccupation with selecting and defending methods to the exclusion of the actual substance of the story being told. So it's a preoccupation with methods. Methodolatory means that it's a slavish preoccupation with method that takes the researcher away in many cases without the researcher realizing from the actual meaning of the research. For example, overuse of statistical tools. So methodolatory is the idolatory of method, or a slavish attachment and devotion to method that so often overtakes the discourse in the education and human service fields. So methodolatory implies that we are so attached to methods, we are so attached to the idea of doing things the right way. It has its own significance. Being so attached, being preoccupied with method has its own significance. It enhances objectivity. But then when we talk about social sciences, where everything that is being studied is so dynamic, everything is so dependent on everything else, this may not be the right course of action. So methodolatory is a concept that describes this preoccupation with the choice of method, and with every step of the method, the preoccupation of doing everything the way it is supposed to be done. Qualitative research depends on the presentation of solid descriptive data so that the researcher leads the reader to an understanding of the meaning of the experience under study. So it depends on the presentation of the data. It depends on the presentation of actual descriptive data so that the researcher leads the reader to an understanding of the meaning of the experience under study, so that the researcher helps the reader understand what is really going on. And what is really going on is so complex. I mean, there are so many things that just cannot be simplified. So qualitative research depends on how this very complex, very dynamic data is presented, so that the meaning filters through and is accepted and received by the reader. Bracketing. The researcher uses constant comparative analysis to look for statements and indices of behavior that occur over time and in a variety of periods during the study, and these statements and indices are then bracketed. Bracketing is the first step here. So we just somehow we realize that these statements, these indices, these patterns of behavior that are occurring over time belong together. Bracketing is bringing things that belong together closer to each other, so we can see that there are similarities in patterns of behavior and phenomena that are occurring, etc. So bracketing means that we just sort of realize that, you know, these things belong together and this set of things belongs together, etc. And that initial process of realizing how and where things belong with each other is called as bracketing. Steps of bracketing: locate within the personal experience or self-story key phrases and statements that speak directly to the phenomenon in question. So how do we bracket? The first step here is that we try and find out statements and phrases and indicators that speak directly, that address directly the phenomenon that is being studied. Then the second step is interpreting the meanings of these phrases and statements and indicators as an informed reader. That is the second step. So first we identify what is going to indicate that it connects with the phenomenon. So indicators of the things that indicate that whatever we are doing is actually going to help us answer the question that we want to answer. So we look for these indicators and then we interpret the meanings of these indicators. Then the third step here is to obtain the participants' interpretations of these findings if possible. So we have, you know, that is what qualitative research is. Qualitative research is not always about observing phenomena, behavior, etc. as a distanced observer. It also includes the perceptions, reflexivity, you know, cross-checking the connection between the observer and the observed, you know, regarding the phenomena that are being studied. So what we do is, after we have interpreted the meanings of these indicators that are connected to the phenomena that are being studied, then we cross-check with the generators of these indicators. So if it's phrases and statements, we talk to the participants, we talk to the people who we are observing, we talk to, or we get in touch with the people who have generated these indicators and find out the interpretations of the meanings of these indicators as connected with the phenomenon that is being studied. That is the third step, getting the participants' perspective on how they interpret these indicators, or whether they even consider what we consider as indicators as researchers, what we consider as indicators of phenomena under study, whether the participants, the people actually in that phenomenon, the people actually being affected or doing that phenomenon, are really you know, do they even consider what we consider as indicators? So are we on the same page as far as the meanings of these indicators are concerned? Then inspect. The fourth step is inspect these meanings for what they reveal about the essential recurring features of the phenomenon being studied. So once these two sets of interpretations are on the same page, then the next step is to find out what these meanings that we have arrived at, you know, we've gone and cross-checked these meanings with the generators of these meanings also. So what these meanings reveal about the essential recurring features of the phenomenon, how they indicate that this phenomenon, or what their connection is with the phenomenon under study. Then offer a tentative statement or definition of the phenomenon in terms of the essential recurring features identified in step 4. So then once we have found out what these meanings are, how these indicators are really connected to the phenomenon in question, once we have obtained the meanings of these indicators from the people who are doing that phenomenon, who are affecting that phenomenon, then we get their perspective and then we come to an informed understanding of how these indicators are connected to the phenomena that are being studied. So words, phrases that explain the phenomenon, or there could be other indicators, and then we put all of these meanings together, and then we offer a tentative statement or definition of the phenomenon in terms of the essential recurring indicators, in order for us to define the scope of the phenomenon under study. That is called bracketing. We need to first find out what it is that we are dealing with, and this process helps us do exactly that. Inductive analysis is another, as another way of designing research. Now, how do we conduct inductive analysis? Inductive analysis means, it refers to immersion in the setting. So incubation allows for thinking, becoming aware of nuance and meaning in the setting, and capturing intuitive insights to achieve understanding. Illumination allows for expanding awareness. Incubation means we think, we immerse ourselves in the setting, then we think, we become aware of what is happening, we absorb everything that is happening in the setting, and we capture intuitive insights, and we try and make sense of everything that we are absorbing. And then the next step in inductive analysis is illumination, which allows for expanding awareness. So illumination means the aha moment. We realize, okay, this is what all of the material that we had observed means. That is illumination, the actual aha moment. Oh yes, now it all fits together and makes sense. That is expanding awareness. Then explication. Once we have realized and we have achieved that aha moment, we've got that aha moment, then what do? We go to the explication. It includes description and explanation to capture the experience of individuals under study. And then we move on to the creative synthesis, which enables the researcher to synthesize and bring together as a whole the individual story, including the meaning of the lived experience. So inductive analysis is analysis from the inside. So we take different parts of the phenomenon that is being studied, we absorb everything, we understand how these pieces fit together, and then we make sense of the whole, the individual story, including the meaning of the lived experience that we are trying to explain. So that is called inductive analysis. Then data triangulation. So data triangulation is the use of a variety of data sources in a study. Data triangulation refers to different sources within the study. Then investigator triangulation, use of several different researchers or evaluators. So different people studying the same phenomenon from different aspects, that is called investigator triangulation. Theory triangulation is the use of multiple perspectives to interpret a single set of data, and methodological triangulation is the use of multiple methods to study a single problem. Why is it not quadrangulation? Why is it not pentagulation? Well, triangulation would, I am assuming that triangulation would refer to the three axes, three-dimensional way of approaching the same phenomenon. We try and cover all aspects. So data triangulation, we triangulate data, we try and triangulate the investigator aspect, we try and triangulate the theory that is being studied, and we try and triangulate methods, which is the reason why these days a mixed methods approach is gaining importance. We say, okay, we are doing our best to explain a phenomenon in as much detail, as objectively, as thoroughly as possible. When we use different methods to explain the same phenomenon, our explanation, our description, our research becomes much more robust. And these are some more ways of approaching our research. Okay, crystallization. Crystallization refers to or recognizes the many facets of any given approach to the social world as a fact of life. The crystal combines symmetry and substance. I'm sorry for the spelling mistake. This should be substance. Symmetry and substance with an infinite variety of shapes, substances, transmutations, multidimensionalities, and angles of approach. Crystals grow, change, and alter, but are not amorphous. They don't disintegrate, they don't become powder. They grow, they have the capacity to retain their basic core and grow in the direction, any direction that offers them the opportunity to grow while maintaining their basic structure. So, what we see when we view a crystal depends on how we view it, how we hold it up to the light or not. What we see when we talk about crystallization, we see different things when we hold up the crystal to light at different angles. We see different things. Crystallization provides us with a deepened, complex, thoroughly partial understanding of the topic. Paradoxically, we know more and doubt what we know. Crystallization helps us realize how much more there is for us to know that we may never know. And that is thorough research. That's what I tell my students. Now, I know I may be critiqued heavily for this, but I feel that, you know, when we talk about social sciences, when we talk about human behavior, there, at least at this point in time, and my colleagues have very often pulled me up for this, and they say, how do you know that we will never be able to do this in time? As an IIT faculty member, I should never use the word never. But at this point in time, I can confidently tell you that there is, I do not foresee anything in the near future that can completely predict human behavior 100%. So, or any social phenomenon, there are so many aspects. The deeper we go, the more we realize how much more there is that we will not be able to find out within the resources we have, within the time that we have, within our capacity of understanding. And that is what crystallization does. We see things. We have a research design, we are trying to see things from a perspective. Even then, the minute we change our perspective, we see something different. And we change our perspective a little bit and we see another ray of light and another hue and another shade. And all of this is part of research design. All of these are different aspects of research design. So, triangulation of data, method, theory, investigator, then crystallization, analysis, inductive analysis. So, all of these are different aspects of research design, and one must know what one needs to use. One must first know what it is that one is trying to find out. And I get slammed by many of my students who say, ma'am, why are you harping on identifying and clarifying the research question? And I keep telling them that unless you know what your research question is, unless you know what the objective of your study is up front, you cannot move forward. There is no way, because only then can you actually probe deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And unless that one statement is totally clear cut and is understood the way you are understanding it by anyone who reads that statement, you still haven't clarified your research question. And thanks to Professor Frank Tance, my PhD supervisor, for making me such a perfectionist when it comes to identifying research questions. So, he immediately, you know, anytime I would go to him with my PhD topic, he would say, why this, why not this? Are you trying to carry out a lifetime project? What are you trying to do with this? Can we cut it down? Can we simplify it? And another person who helped me do it was my late Professor Alton Barber, who passed away last year. He was my co-supervisor. So, these two people, stalwarts in their own discipline, helped me identify this. And I'm telling you, as students, you must be able to zero in on that all elusive research question. And only then can you really do thorough research. Credibility, validity, and reliability is another aspect of qualitative research. Now, validity in qualitative research has to do with description and explanation, and whether or not the explanation fits the description. Validity means, in very simple terms, in research terms, validity means whether whatever we are doing to answer the question we have asked is actually going to answer the question we have asked. Now, when we talk about validity in qualitative research, we are talking about whether the description and explanation will really fit with whatever we are asking. So, nothing can be definite. Okay. Qualitative researchers do not claim that there is only one way of interpreting an event. There is no one correct interpretation. There is no one correct explanation. So, how does one check? We check using member checks and audit trails. We insist that the situation be studied in its entirety, within its context, within its chaos, within its complexity, so that we can at least describe the context and let the reader find out whether our explanation is valid or not. So, we spend a lot of time as qualitative researchers on describing the context. We spend a lot of time explaining to the reader what it is that we are trying to describe and why, and within what context, within what limitations, etc. That is all we have time for today. So, let us just go back into this a little bit. These are all aspects of research design: methodology, bracketing, inductive analysis, data triangulation, crystallization, and credibility, validity, and reliability. I mean, how do we decide whether any research is credible, whether it's believable, whether it's reliable? So, reliability has to do with replicability of results. You do the same test and you get a similar result at the end of the same test every time. That is possible in the pure sciences. With human behavior, we cannot always be 100% sure. We have different measures of what counts as acceptable levels of reliability. So, when we talk about research methods, when we talk about qualitative research, it is the acceptance of the description within the context by describing the context, the chaos, the complexity to the reader, and then letting the reader make his or her own judgment about whether the description of the phenomenon really fits in with whatever is set out to have been explored, or whether the description really fits in with the objective of the research. And that pretty much sums up our discussion on qualitative research design. In the next session, we will take up the issue of some qualitative research in strategies of qualitative research inquiry, and we will start with ethnography. Thank you very much for listening.